Okay, today I thought I would do an instructional type video on how to set up and begin using your Bond Ultimate Sweater machine. So I'm going to start right from scratch and show you how to set up the machine and start using it. So to begin with, you do need, well, it's not really detrimental, but it's ideal. You need a knitting machine table specifically for the use of knitting machines. It's long, stable and flat. It's about a ½ inch thick and they have flat edges, and they can also fold up so they're easy to store. But not everybody will have a knitting machine table. You can pick these up on eBay and places like that used, so they're a bit cheaper, but you can obviously still buy them new. I think Bond still sells them on their website. But if you don't have a knitting machine table, it's not the end of the world. Here is my dining room table, and it has a curved front edge, as you can see there. Now Bond do stress highly that you don't use a table with a rounded edge or apron edge, but I just thought I'd set it up on my dining room table just to show you that you don't need a perfect table to be able to use your Ultimate Sweater machine. As long as the table is flat and the very bottom edge of the table there is flat and it's not like bumpy underneath, it's just got a straight edge along and it's long enough, then your Bond will clamp to it just fine. So, here's the box. This is the old Bond Ultimate Sweater machine, and it has the older Carriage, the machine is exactly the same as the ones that you can buy brand new now. The only difference being is on the new Carriage it has an extra little piece it's called the wings, I believe they call them. They sort of stick out a little bit there, and they're green. This Carriage still has the green stripper plates underneath, but they don't stick out as much on the old Carriage. But that's the only difference. The machine is exactly the same. It's just the box and the Carriage that's different. So it opens this way, so it'll have all the writing away from you. You open it, and inside you will find, well, you might be able to if I can keep the box open. First of all, you'll find the instruction and pattern book. So in this pack you will find the pattern book. This is the old pattern book. Of course, the ones that come with the new machines now have up-to-date fashion projects in them, I suppose. You'll also find the main Ultimate Sweater machine instructions. Shows you how to set up the machine. There's Carrie Clement. And really, if you read all the instructions, you should be fine, really. I mean, everything that I'll discuss in this video is talked about in the manual. Anyway, you'll get a ball of yarn to practice with. The next comes out is the accessory box. Open this up and you'll find the black plastic hem, which is used for weighting the knitting. You'll find 4 green cards and 1 yellow card. You'll find the instructional video, or if you have a new model then it'll be a DVD, but as this is an older model it comes with a VHS. You'll find a bag containing the accessories, which is like a Ziploc affair, and in this bag contains two transfer tools. They have prongs on them and a little hole like that. There's two of those. There's one on its own and there's another one with a latch hook tool. You'll find 3 clips. You'll find 2 elastic bands and 4 S-hooks, and those are used for weighting the edges of the knitting to stop it from curling up. There's a nut and a bolt, elastic thread and a piece of wax. And then there should be another bag which has the clamps in. This is what clamped the machine to the table and stops it from moving about. And these clamps should have the main shaft of the clamp. They should have a wing nut and the plastic piece which pushes up against the edge of the table and clamps the machine to the table, and there should be 2 of those. And finally you'll find another bag with 4 key plates in. These are called key plates. There's 4 of them. They're labelled 1, 2, 3 and 4. Key plate number 1 is used for double knit yarn or sport weight. Oh, it's more baby yarns this and double knit. This is for sport weight, sorry, number 2. There's also a reverse side which is 2.5. So that's just an extra size. Number 3 is for worsted weight yarns, and for the thicker worsted weight you have 3.5. So that's worsted or Aran. And then number 4 is for the chunky yarns. So it goes number 1 double knit, number 2 sport weight, number 3 worsted weight or Aran, and number 4 is chunky. So that's that. And those are the key plates, but for the yarn that comes with the machine when you buy it new, you will be practicing with the key plate 3. That's the thickness of the yarn that comes with it, is Aran. Next thing to come out the box is the first bed half and carriage. This should be the left bed half. Just take the carriage off, it just lifts off like that. And then the second bed half. Then finally, under this piece of cardboard, are the 4 rod weights. That's the last thing to come out the box. Oops, I don't drop it on the floor. There we go. And these go inside the black plastic hem. And that's what gives you the weight for the knitting. Now the first thing we need to do is join the beds together. Now if you have a brand new machine, you'll find a piece of yellow tape along the back of the needles there, and that's just to stop the needles from coming forward, because if you tip the bed forward, all the needles come out like that because they're loose, and that's how they're supposed to be. The new machines shouldn't really do that, they'll be under a bit more tension, but these older machines, the needles were loose. So that's all that yellow tape is for, is just to hold the needles in place. So remove that and then take the right hand bed half and hook that into the channel on the left half like this. There's a little lip, as you can see, and that hooks in to that groove there. You just press it down and it should snap into place like that. Then turn the beds over and you'll see that there's rods joining these modules of the beds together, but where we've just joined these 2 halves there's a little hole, there's nothing holding it together. That's where we need to use the nut and bolt. you just take the little screw and push that through the hole, like that, and then take the bolt and screw that on, like that. Just hand tighten it, it doesn't need to be tightened with a spanner or wrench. And now if you tip the machine forward, you'll notice at the front bottom edge of the bed there, there's little holes. There's one there on that side and there's one on the other side. And that's where the clamps fit. So loosen the clamps off a bit depending on how thick your table is. So that should be enough. Excuse me. And you take this piece of the clamp here, the shaft, and push it through that hole, the front of the machine, like that. And it's important that it slides between the bed there and underneath this metal rod. It doesn't want to go wiggle to the side or over the top of that rod. It needs to go underneath that rod, like that. Make sure it's pushed all the way in. Do the same with the other one. Again, between the bed there and between underneath that metal rod. Now we need to bring the machine forward like this. And oops, that one's come out. And now you need to make sure that this front bottom edge of the bed is lined up with the edge of the table there. These little tiny feet on them. They just need to be lined up with the edge. Like that, as you can see. Then you just put the clamps in place and tighten the wing nuts under the clamps. Don't tighten too much because that can tip the bed forward. You don't want that. The same on the other side. Making sure again that that's flush with the edge of the table. It's easier to tighten these with two hands, of course, but just check that the machine isn't tilted forward. That's alright. It should just be enough just to hold it. So next we've got the bed set up on the table. The next thing you would do if it was a new machine is attach these number strips. They're just basically a strip of adhesive stickers. It's one long strip. There's two of them. There's one for the right hand side of the bed and one for the left hand side of the bed. And basically all they're for is to mark the needles in increments of 5. So it simplifies counting. So there's 5, 10, 15 and so on. And they're marked in white and purple. So it's like a light section and a shaded section. And that just helps you count the stitches. And when you attach that, you need to start in the centre with on the right side of the bed, you need to start with the light unshaded section and stick that on all the way across. And then for the left hand side of the bed at the centre, you need to start with the shaded section and then stick that down. So it looks like that. So there's the centre. So we've got unshaded, shaded. It's just to simplify counting, that's all those stickers are for. But if you've bought a used machine, they will no doubt have already been stuck on. So the next thing to do is to push the needles forward, and you do that with these green cards. Now you get 4 of those with the machine, and they bring forward 25 needles at a time. Now on the standard Ultimate Sweater Machine bed, there's 100, so of course 4 of these equals 100 stitches. And all they do is bring the needles forward for you, and then you put them behind the needles to stop them from moving back. If you see, if they weren't there, they'd just push back, and you don't want that. But before I select the needles and start casting on, I'll just show you the different parts of the needle and the needle positions. So these needles have 4 parts to them. They have this part here, which is called the butt, and that is what the key plate uses to push the needles forward and back. There's the shaft of the needle, which is the long piece which makes up the most part of the needle. There's the hook, which opens and closes. Sorry, the latch, forgive me. The latch, which opens and closes there. And then finally there's the hook, which is on the edge of the needle there. So when that latch closes, that's what forms the stitches. The carriage deposits new yarn into the hook. I'll just show you that. There'll be a stitch on the needle. Like that, say that's a stitch. And the carriage deposits new yarn into the hook of that needle, and as the carriage pulls the needle back, the latch closes and the stitch pulls off to form the stitch. And that's how the machine works. Now there are 4 needle positions. There is non-working position, which is what all these needles are in right now. There are no stitches on the needles and they are not knitting. There is working position, which is the normal knitting position. This is the position for regular knitting that the carriage will leave the stitches in. There is forward working position, which is this position here. The needles are extended about from the front edge of the bed here. The latch is sort of lined up with the edge of the needle bed there. That's forward working position, and that's used for casting on and some fancy stitches. And then finally there is holding position. These needles have stitches on them, but they're not knitting. They're out of work. So these 2 positions in between, the forward working position and working position, they both knit. And these other 2 positions, non-working position and holding position, don't knit. The only difference being is non-working position needles don't have stitches on, but holding position stitches do have stitches on. So that's the needle positions. So I'm going to use the green card here to select needles. So here's our centre. It's important to centre the stitches on the bed, mainly to simplify counting because it makes it easier, but it's not crucial. So there's the centre 0, or the centre of the bed, and we just bring the needles forward with the green card here, and then put the card behind it to keep the needles in position. I'm going to bring another one on the left side here and put the card behind that, and that's 50 stitches. So that's how many I'm going to be casting on. The next thing to do is open up the hem and put the 4 rod weights down into the hem. There's little pockets in either side, on both sides of the hem, and there'll be 4 rods in this, so you need to put 2 rods in each side of the hem and they'll overlap in the centre. So just put the weight rods in because that will require 2 hands, and I will be back with you. So the weight rods are now in the hem. So we pick up the hem and we find the centre. The centre is marked with a small hole there, as you can see. And that is the centre of your hem. So you match up that centre strip there, where that hole is, with the centre needle bed, which is here, where we join the 2 halves together. So we line up that centre strip with the centre needle bed, and put it between the needles like that and lay the top of the hem on the needle bed. And there should be one plastic strip between each of the needles like that. Now we take one of these transfer tools and open all the latches. Just run it along to help you open the latches like that. This is what the latches look like when they're closed. This is what they look like when they're open. There we go. Now we cut a piece of the elastic thread like this, and then we lay it into the open hooks. Oops. Like that. And then we need to take two of the clips and we need to attach a clip on each end. Just have to put my knee there so it doesn't drop to the floor. Like that. And that just weights it down like that. So as you can see, you need to make sure the elastic stays in the hook. Like that. Now, pick up the hem and fold it over the elastic like that. And it should just be about roughly in half like that. And once again, make sure there's only one hem strip between each needle. Now, hold the hem and push it back against the needle bed like that. And then remove these green cards and put the yellow card in place like that. And using one of these green cards, push the needles back against the yellow card, and that puts the needles in the forward working position so they are ready to begin knitting. You'll need to move the yellow card as you go along, because you only get one, until you've pushed all the needles into the forward working position. Now we need to put the carriage on the needle bed. If you notice underneath the carriage there's little hooks on the back of it there, and those hooks need to hook onto the back rail there. Let's see if I can show you from a better angle. You need to line the carriage up at an angle like that and hook it over the back rail and drop it forward like that, and it should move freely on the bed. I'll show you again. Hook the carriage over the back rail like that and drop it forward. It should be so that this green stripper plate here, it should run under the needles like that. Make sure you do this, try this without the key plates in, otherwise the stitches will start to move and they could drop off. So just check without the key plate in that the stripper plate runs under the needles like that. If it's going over the top like that or catching on them, you need to take it off and reattach it. Just make sure that it moves easily. But it should run under the needles like that. Next, open the carriage handle and insert key plate number 3 with the number facing up. Make sure the back of the key plate slips under the 2 pips at the back, like that. You don't want it going over the top like that, you want it sitting underneath them, and just push it home like that and close the handle. Next thing we need to do is thread the carriage. So take the ball of yarn that came with the machine, pull out several lengths because the yarn needs to be very free flowing. Then take the end of the yarn and bring it through the slot in the handle there, and then down through the eye of the carriage. And make sure it's pushed well into the carriage. You don't want it like that, you want it pushed right into that slot there like that. Now attach a clip to the end. You would be using two hands, you'd have a hand on the carriage and a hand to clip this on. So I'm just going to use my knee again. So we just use the clip to weight the arm down, just so we've got a free hand to hold the hem back like this. We need to push it back slightly with our other hand and move our hand along like that as we're pushing the carriage, and that stops the stripper plates on the carriage catching on the loops there of the hem. Just push it back like that as you're pushing the carriage along. But obviously before this yarn catches the first needle, we need to make sure we hold the yarn against the carriage like that. Otherwise, if I didn't hold onto it, gravity would do its work and the clip would drop to the floor, and we don't want that. So, start again. So, holding the the yarn being fed through the handle against the handle so it doesn't drop through, just enough so it's weighting it down. Begin to push the carriage onto these needles. Then when the first needle catches the yarn, like that, you can then let go of that. And then push the carriage with one hand as you hold the hem back with the other. And all the stitches should knit off, but before you knit that row, do check that these latches are open. If one of these latches are closed like that, then the yarn will not catch into the hook and it will drop the stitch, and you don't want that. So hopefully this won't catch on the hem because I haven't got another hand to hold it back, but just take it across like that. There we go, and that's all 50 stitches knitted in a few seconds. And we'll leave that clip on the end of the yarn there just for the initial weight so it knits off easily. Before we begin the next row, we need to hold the slack yarn as we push the carriage. And as you can see, if I show you in there, as I'm pulling the yarn back there with the other hand, it's taking up that slack yarn so that a loop won't form at the edge of the knitting. And you can let go of the yarn and let it feed completely freely as soon as that first needle catches the yarn. And you just carry on. And that's all there is to it, really. Make sure that when you've pushed the carriage to finish a row, that you push it well beyond the last stitch to make sure that it's knitted off properly. Pull the yarn back, let go when it catches on the first stitch, and knit the row. Again, make sure the carriage has cleared the very last working needle, then pull the slack back, let go when it catches, and continue to knit. At first you might think there's a lot to remember and it can be quite intimidating if you're a new machine knitter, but with a bit of practice it's very easy really, and you should be able to pick it up quite quickly. And if I haven't been a help to you, there's plenty of other YouTube videos, and of course your instruction book, which tells you about everything. It gives you a yarn chart there of which key plates to use with which yarns, troubleshooting and all sorts of fancy stitches and things in your pattern book, in your instruction book rather. So just read the instructions and you shouldn't have a problem. So hopefully this has helped some of you to set up your ultimate sweater machine, but if not, I'm sorry. But there are plenty of other videos and of course the instructions. So thanks for watching, and I hope this video has helped to you.